and I've recently completed the Thrive program on my own, and I can say that I am 95% over my phobia. I'm going to try and keep this as sort of condensed as I can. The last videos that I've recorded have been like 25 to 30 minutes long. So I'm going to try and just kind of highlight the main points in this one, okay? So I've had emetophobia for sort of 10 to 11 years. Started when I was 13, 14, and I'm 24 now. So I have suffered with it for a long time. Basically, it sort of began with having really, really uncomfortable, really panicky feelings around being sick. So it started around Christmas time, I think, when I was around 13. And basically I was just having panic attacks thinking that I was ill, because I was, at the time, I believed that it was caused by previous memories of me being unwell at Christmas. Or having like sort of a winter bug or that sort of thing, like being sick at Christmas. And so it started then. Basically, a few of the sort of main things that I would avoid, starting off with, would be avoiding meat. So I became sort of a vegetarian between the age of like 14, 16, 17. Avoided eating meat, just thought it was way easier to just stop. Would constantly be checking dates on foods, asking my mum and dad whether they cook things right or whether the dates were right. The only person I would trust to cook food for me would be my mum, or like McDonald's or something. And if I went to my dad's house, I generally wouldn't eat what he made me, and it would have to be something like pizza or something really, really simple to make, because otherwise I would just worry. Through this time, I had quite a sort of heavy attachment to my mum as well. I used her as reassurance. So over the 10 years that I've had emetophobia, my mum has been my significant other in terms of reassurance. Obviously, if you read the manual, you'll know all about significant others and how that can really, really impact the progression of your emetophobia. So I would text her kind of from that age, like of like 15, 16 through to like, to be honest, maybe like 3 months ago. So basically for the entire time that I've had emetophobia, I would be texting my mum every single day with emetophobia related worries. Things like, will I be okay from touching this door handle? Will I be okay from this? Will I be okay from that? And I would back her into sort of a corner of like kind of forcing her to collude with me. And obviously, again, when you read the manual, you'll see that colluding is a big, big part of sort of why a lot of emetophobes struggle to get over their phobia. So I would use her as my reassurance. So it would be like, will I be sick from this? Will this make me ill? Will this? I would actually never use the word sick. And I'll come back to that in a bit because that's quite an important part. But I would say things like, will this make me anxious? I feel anxious. I would use that word instead because I didn't want to say the word sick. So it's a little bit of like kind of superstition there. So all through my teenage years, would avoid seeing my friends at break times at schools, would avoid maybe going into school on a couple of days, would avoid eating my lunch at school because then it meant I had something on my stomach. Would, if any of my friends were ill for whatever reason, it could just be a cold, I would be texting them saying, what are your symptoms? What's wrong with you? Will I catch it? And then obviously I'll be texting my mum saying, will I catch it? I'd be going on and on and on to her basically. If she would have said to me, well, if you catch it, you catch it. Like, if she'd have said anything like that, that would have sent me into a tailspin of panic and fear. So she was kind of in a position where she was forced by me and my language to collude with me. And obviously at the time, so I'd gone to CAMS and I'd gone to therapy. We didn't know that it was emetophobia. We just thought it was OCD, which is what I was diagnosed with. Because of my hand washing, because of my excessive checking of dates, excessive habits, things like that. And she thought it was to do with sort of, she is in the therapist, thought it was to do with like sort of past trauma from like times when I'd been sick as a child and that sort of thing. So yeah, so I've explained that obviously going to my dad's house, having food at my dad's was just absolute no. Wouldn't eat food from anyone other than my mum. And basically this just kind of progressed, and knowing what I know now, I can look back and see the times where my self-esteem was at its best and at its worst. And when my self-esteem was at its best, my emetophobia was at its best. So my emetophobia would be quite sort of dormant almost. And I'd be really, really good at avoiding things. I'd feel confident that I could avoid anything that would make me sick. And so because of that, my self-esteem, so my self-esteem was quite an important part of it. I went to college and studied music. Was something that I thought, I felt like I was really good at and still do. So I still gig quite often. But at the time, it was kind of my first experience being exposed to other students and other people who did music, and got on really well with everybody. That boosted my self-esteem massively. Became sort of quite sort of popular within our little cohort, and that really made me feel a lot better about myself, and therefore my emetophobia symptoms started to reduce a lot. So through that time, started eating meat again in small areas, kind of, but wouldn't eat chicken, wouldn't be near anyone who was ill still had all those same avoidance strategies and safety seeking behaviours, like texting my mum, all that stuff. Fast forward through to my 20s, so sort of age of 20 to 24 now, pretty much high functioning through that time. Met my now partner when I was 22, to the point where sort of she was sick at the start of our relationship, and I was like looking after her, and even though I was panicked, I was still looking after her. And so my emetophobia did really sort of take a back seat because my self-esteem was so high, especially when I met her. And obviously that's not something I knew at the time. It's something I know now looking back, so I can see that timeline. Because if you read the manual, you'll see how important the self-esteem aspect is. And so started seeing her, started eating chicken from places like Nando's, which I wouldn't in the past. And then had a pretty high functioning summer 2024, so that was the summer just gone. Bar a couple of episodes of sort of like, I had like a bit of a bad stomach, which made me panic that I would be sick, but it never really lasted any longer than a couple of days, the panic. And then, so Christmas time, as I mentioned, was generally the worst time for me. So November just gone, I started to panic a lot more, started to have a lot more anxiety around being sick, stopped doing things that I was doing, so I stopped eating out. And I was sort of going through a bit of a career change period, bit of financial difficulty, and ended up, because of the emetophobia, ended up leaving my job. So I was working as a CrossFit coach and I was working as a part-time barista. Left both the jobs because I just couldn't handle being around anybody for long periods of time, because I was so in fear that I was going to be sick. I was basically living every day in terror, essentially. So probably the worst Christmas of my life just gone. It was impacting everything. It was impacting my relationship massively. My partner at the time sort of was quite worried about me, didn't really know, neither of us knew that this is what it was. I knew that I had emetophobia because I'd heard people talk about that and say that word, but I'd just kind of assumed, well, I've got emetophobia, so that's it. Like, never believed that there would be a cure for it, or that I would feel as good as I do now. But there you go. So it just progressively got worse, to the point where I was me and my partner went to Edinburgh, and I was just spending like we went to Edinburgh for 3 days this December just gone, and I was just like every day having panic attacks in fear, couldn't get out of this fearful fight or flight state because I was just so afraid of being sick. For no particular reason other than I'd just obsessed and brooded about it that much that it just became my entire identity, basically. And so, like I said, Christmas just gone, probably the worst Christmas. Stopped eating, stopped training, the gym, because I was so afraid of being sick. Just obsessed about everything like that, just so much. And then got to sort of New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve was probably the worst I was. Had anxiety around sort of a social gathering that me and my partner were going to go to. And it just, like, I was just so in sort of fight or flight for hours and hours. Like, I think I was up pretty much all night until my partner managed to calm me down. She sort of helped me a lot that night. And basically, I just spent a lot of the evening walking around where I live at night in the rain in this panicked state, and I just couldn't get out of this. This is it. I'm going to be sick. This is going to be the worst thing in the world. Worse than dying, worse than, anything else. Like, and in my head, that is really what I believed. And I was so scared. Like, I would use this analogy of being in a panic attack and feeling like there's like a storm over the top of you, and like you've just got to wait until it passes. Like, that's what I believed. I would just have to wait until it passed, as if it was something that was happening to me, which of course now I know that it isn't, after reading the manual and doing everything in there. And so found the manual, because the day after New Year's Eve I decided to Google emetophobia, found Thrive program, found Emetophobia-Free, watched all the videos of Rob on seminars, watched the testimonials, things like that, because I was so skeptical that this thing could actually like cure me of emetophobia. And I thought, well, 2,000 odd people can't lie, so gave it a go, dived right into it. I think the day I bought the manual, I just started doing it straight away. Read the first few chapters within like 3 days or something. And then I think I finished the manual in around sort of maybe 1.5, 2 weeks. Did all the actions, did everything, even the ones that I might have thought at the time I didn't really need to do, still did them. And that's a really, really key part of this. And I guess one of the main hurdles that I sort of came across while reading the manual was my perfectionism, and also not really taking the time on every chapter to fully digest everything, because I just wanted to do it as fast as possible. I wanted to sort of get over it as fast as possible, so I'd read everything like really, really quick. And although I was taking notes on everything, and I was like had my notebook full of notes, I just perhaps could have done it a little bit slower. And I think that is a key part of it. Like, don't feel like you have to rush through this. Really take your time, understand everything. Okay, if you just bought it and you're skeptical about it, or you're sort of, if you bought it and you're like super excited to get going, just kind of pace yourself, take your time. There's no rush. And so started doing that, finished the manual, started my Thrive journal, which I really enjoyed. So it's like a 6-week journal, essentially. I'm now on my second journal, I think. And it's just great. Like, it's a great routine, sort of writing about the day that you're going to have, and then writing about the day you've had at the end of the day. That was one of the things that I really looked forward to doing. And it obviously reminds you of perspective as you're going through the program. It's a really great reminder of that. So I'd recommend getting the journal if you have got the manual. I think it's only like £10 or something. It's worth getting. And so started doing that. One of the things I really struggled with was my perfectionism. I was emailing Rob a lot about whether I was doing enough, or whether what I was doing was right, or was I doing everything properly, correctly, that sort of thing, making sure everything made sense. So I would say try not to obsess about whether you're doing it right. All you need to do is do it. You don't have to do it perfectly. You just need to do it. Do every page, do everything it says, and you will feel better. You will see results. I think within the first 3 weeks of doing it, I was going back to the gym and training. I'd got a new job, been to an interview. Even though those things really freaked me out and I was still having my safety seeking behaviours and my avoidance stuff, I still managed to do them, and I know that I wouldn't have done before. I've started a new career. So I've got a job at a roastery, a coffee roastery, and that's kind of where my career path is going now. And I really feel like because I was able to internalize everything and really change the way I thought about things, my life became a lot better. I will also give just a quick note on sort of blips. I went through, so I was about week 4 maybe into my journal, and I had a pretty big blip. Lasted sort of 3 to 4 days. And it was because I was giving myself such a hard time over my safety seeking behaviours. So my safety seeking behaviour was Jakeman's menthol sweets, okay, and like bottles of pop and stuff. So I'd spent time at work without my Jakeman sweets, and I was rewarding myself for that. However, I was absolutely desperate to have a safety seeking behaviour, or like to use that, or have a sweet, or have some pop or something like that, and I was restricting myself. And because of that, rather than focusing on thriving and enjoying my life, I was so focused on just getting rid of the safety seeking behaviours that it just all ended up being ended in a big panic essentially. So like one night I'd got home from work and I just started to brood and obsess over being sick basically, and I was convincing myself that I was ill. And without perspective, I wouldn't have been able to get out of that blip. Or I would have eventually, obviously, but it would have taken way more time. My partner is probably the least colluding person in the world, and she really helped me in this situation because she essentially said to me that I need to stop kind of letting this impact my life. And I either choose to let it or I choose to not. And that is like, she really understood the sentiment behind the manual, and it really helps if you have people around you, whether that is your significant other and you explain to them that they shouldn't be colluding with you, or whether you've got another person in your life that's really close that can always remind you of that perspective. And that's what she did. Better yet, get yourself a little notebook, write all of your little successes in it, like as many as you can through the day, whatever you feel like is a success for you, and that gives you a benchmark to look back on. So, and I will say that I got the blip recovery plan as well, and that was really helpful. But I know that I would have come out of that blip regardless, because I got perspective, and that is what it comes down to. One of the things that I will say as well, just when you are at that point where you feel like you might be over your phobia, you need to start telling yourself that you are. That was the big breakthrough for me, was telling myself that I'm doing this. It's not happening to me. I am over my phobia. It's just about emotions that I create around being sick. It's not about being sick. And as soon as I realised that, everything clicked. My life became so much better. This is like week 4 of the journal, and I think week 5 and 6 and then onwards to now have just been such like so life-changing. I've started eating chicken, like I've started going out, I've started training all the time. Like, I'm training after work, I'm training before work, like I'm spending full days at work without hardly any anxiety, like. And so, I will say I'm 95% over it, because I have still got sort of bits of anxiety around things, and I won't eat all chicken, and I won't eat sort of certain meats still. I'm still trying to figure my way around that, but I know that I will, because I've got the skill set now to cope with difficult situations. So essentially, sort of coping with difficult situations, tolerating the anxiety, even if you can tell yourself intellectually that you are over the phobia, you might still feel a little bit anxious, but that's perfectly normal. It's tolerating that anxiety, still carrying on with your life, still doing the things that you want to do that will get you over your phobia. Focus on thriving, not on safety-seeking behaviours, not on, am I doing this right, am I not? If you just focus on thriving, your life will become better and you will overcome the phobia. One other thing I will say just quickly, it's 20 minutes on video now, a lot longer than I wanted it to be. Don't skip over the thriving goals and the thriving challenges part of it. Okay, they don't have to be emetophobia related, but if you read in the manual, you'll see there's a part about goals, setting goals for yourself, for your self-esteem, and for your internal sense of power and control. Set yourself some goals. They don't have to be emetophobia related, just things that you might be a little bit wary of, a little bit fearful of, but not phobic of necessarily. For me, it was heights, so started bouldering with my partner a lot. That really helped. Made my self-esteem really boost up. I started having cold showers every day and just increasing the time that I was sort of in that cold shower for. Uncomfortable situations that I knew I could cope with, but was still a bit wary of, and I'm still sort of coping with them, building my skill set, building my coping skills. And one thing that I always used to do was sleep with the light on and with the TV on, and I slowly progressed that to the point where now I'm just sleeping in the dark, and that was a really tough thing for me to get over. That was something that was really uncomfortable, but I did it and I coped, and that had a bunch of benefits to my life, and I got better sleep and all sorts. So just really sit and take the time to think of some thriving challenges that are about living your life to the full, because at the end of the day, the program is about thriving. And as long as you keep that as the goal, and you know that this isn't happening to you, and you remind yourself of that every single day, you will overcome your emetophobia. I'm 95% of the way there. I know that last 5% I'm going to manage because I have that skill set now. So yeah, really hope everything goes well for you. Enjoy the manual, enjoy doing it, enjoy thriving. And yeah, hope it goes well for you.